Welcome back, everybody. Let us turn our attention to Islam. Now, to understand Islam, we really have to understand the context in which it arose, because that's where we find the answer to our question, what's the problem? So the society in which Muhammad grew up was one that had violence and chaos on all sides. There wasn't a central government for the city of Mecca. There was just a bunch of individual tribes that were at each other's throats pretty much all the time. There were blood feuds between the tribes, and the blood feuds were terrible. Now, a blood feud kind of works like this. I find a dead goat near the border between my property and yours, and I figure you must have done it. So, in order to not lose face, I have to kill two of your goats to make it even. Well, you can't let that stand, or you'll lose face. Your honor will suffer, and you can't have that. So, in order to save face, you have to kill three of my goats. Well, I can't let that stand. I've got to kill three of your goats and two of your cows. You can't let that stand. You've got to kill a whole herd of my cows and my sister. I can't let that. You see what I mean? So it just escalates, and the violence gets worse, and it threatens to spiral out of control. And we don't just have this going with one neighboring tribe. We have these blood feuds going with all of the tribes all the way around us. It's chaos. It was so much chaos that Muhammad despaired that his people would never be able to prosper, would never survive. He saw the cities that his Jewish neighbors had, and saw how they were flourishing because they had a book. And he saw his Christian neighbors, and that they were flourishing because they had the Gospels. They had something to order their lives by. And he went up to the mountain to pray and poured out his heart and said, Allah, God, why have you abandoned us? You sent a prophet to the Jews, you've sent a prophet to the Christians. Why have you not sent a prophet to us? Why have you not given us a book? See how our people are suffering. And God says, well, be careful what you ask for. How about you? So, yeah, let that be a lesson not to complain too loud to the wrong person. Because, Muhammad became that prophet, and a new book came into being through him. So the human condition that Muhammad was struggling with, that his people were struggling with, was injustice and suffering. Just chaos, a chaos of justice and suffering. And so what's the remedy? Well, the remedy that started to come through this new revelation, this new book, was a call to found and maintain the Ummah. The Ummah was the just society. The just society is a shining dream where everybody has enough to eat, where poor people as well as the rich have access to justice, where nobody is outcast, where everybody has a place and a function within society. It's a great dream. It's a grand dream. But the problem with this dream is human nature. It's pride, right? It's the same pride that 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 caused us to have all of these blood feuds in the first place. It's pride that causes all of this injustice and suffering. So how do we bring about this Ummah? How do we bring about this just society? We do it through Islam. Islam is a word that means submission. It means that to succeed in bringing forth Allah's dream of the just society, that I must sacrifice my good for the good of the whole. I must sacrifice what I want for me and my family so that everyone can have enough. So I must submit my needs and my desires and my pride to Allah so that there can be peace and order and harmony and plenty for everybody in the community. It means we need to submit our desire to hoard food. It means we must submit our desire for revenge. It means we must submit our petty notions that we're somehow better than the people in the tents over that way. That's a lot of submission. And it felt like a lot of submission. And in fact, it was a lot of submission. You know, we don't like submission. We don't like to submit. We like to be in control. But this was the revelation that came to Muhammad. He says, if we want to break this pride and break the tragedy of injustice and suffering, we must found the just society, the Ummah. And the way we do this is to submit ourselves to Allah. Now, one of the ways that he really drove this home was saying that men, because it was really very much the patriarchs of society whose pride needed saving, that drove a lot of the bloodshed, forced them to get on the ground and put their face on the ground 5 times a day in front of their women and their servants. It was kind of an aggressive re-education program designed to break their pride. And amazingly, it worked. People submitted to Allah. And if you didn't submit, you kept quiet about it. Because the good of the whole required everyone to make this submission. So, is this an individual or a corporate form of salvation? Well, everyone must submit individually, and that submission is hard. It's a battle that needs to be fought in the battlefield of each individual's heart. This is the greater jihad, right? But the purpose of that is for the good of the whole. So it's very much a corporate form of salvation that is hoped for. Now, Muslims do believe in heaven or hell, but they're kind of afterthoughts. Going to heaven is not considered, it's not what, hell is not what Islam saves us from. Islam saves us from violence on earth by submitting ourselves to the will of Allah. And so forming the Ummah, forming the just society, that is what salvation is in Islam. And if we do that well, we get a bonus, which is heaven. But heaven and hell are really not the focus. The focus is creating a just society here on earth. And this is the human value. We get a good life here on earth, but not just we, everyone gets a good life here on earth. And, it's not a bad bonus to have life hereafter in paradise as well.